Okay, I'm going to show you a piece of code in the transaction.cpp that's showing you how I did the first constructor, which is kind of summarize the question Joseph asked earlier, but also talk about what need to be done for the constructor in order to get it compiled. Because you will, if you only did the things I just said earlier, you will still have errors. So I'm going to tell you what you need to do. Why? Hold on, I don't like this. I want to do it differently. I want to use this one. Okay. Here, let me get rid of this too. And change the font. I want to use okay, I'm going to explain this piece of code here, the constructor. So this is the first few lines of the code from transaction.cpp. And the first line you're probably familiar with is already in there, is transaction.h, you have to include it. And also the third line, fourth line, fifth line, sixth line, those part is basically just adding the initialization for the first constructor, which I only have a one, which is argument type. And you can see that inside there, I have the TR type is set to be argument type because that's the only things I have. And the other thing I need to do is that I need to get the transaction count to be plus plus. And here I'm using a convention, which you see that I have a capital transaction, colon, transaction count. This is basically for readability. I don't think you, at this point, you need transaction, colon. You might not need it. But I always did that first time I started to use this kind of static variable for class variable, because I want to differentiate that this is a member variable, that this is a class variable. If this is a class object variable, I won't do this. In fact, I actually contradict myself. In fact, the best way I would have done this, let me actually do this, is I would say this to the type. I think this is the best style of the code. So the second line, I say this to the TR type is equal to argument type, means that TR type is a regular member attribute. It's an object attribute. So every object has a copy TR type. But if I say transaction, colon, transaction under count, that means that is either a member function, which is associated with a class, or it's a member attribute like a transaction count. Okay, so that's just a notation for me to update. Okay, the reason I need to show this to you and to everybody, and I want to record, is the line in between. That is the trick, which I don't think I ever mentioned in the recorded lecture. I only mentioned this last year also in the office hour. Is that you have to somewhat declare and assign, initialize that variable. And for you to do that, you have to add this line in the transaction.cpp. You cannot even add this line at the transaction.h, because you can imagine transaction.h, the code will be used by other code as well. If you have a multiple of this line, for those who include transaction.h, this is going to be a linker error because it will link to the wrong place. So you have to add this line in transaction.cpp. And you can try to actually put it in transaction.h for this line, and then have the other, later you learned about inheritance, you can actually inherit from transaction.h or include transaction.h. Then your code will have a linking error there. Okay, so this is the things you should learn about the class variable instead of regular object variable. That's actually one of the important thing I would like to I like you to really learn from this piece of code. Okay. Any question?
Hi, Professor.
Yes.
Yes. Can you please specify which line that you were mentioning?
Sure.
Thank you. Or maybe put your cursor next to it. Thank you.
I will actually be very specific.
Oh, Professor, thank you for answering my question, though.
Oh, you're welcome, Joseph. One second. I mean, you're helping everybody and helping me as well for asking a very important question. This line I was talking about. Okay, this line.
Can you also explain what does unsigned?
Okay, this is the notation, what we call bracket initialization. So anytime you see something like this is called bracket initialization, and also is a declaration of the variable. This line really helped the compiler to reserve memory for that class variable, because okay, when I talk about memory layout, I will go into this a little bit detail. You know what? This question is excellent. I mean, I really like this question because it touches on so many things about the language design. So first, I will explain what is the unsigned integer coming from. So if you look at the code, I have to go to transaction.h this time. Okay, inside transaction H, you see that this is transaction H, I have the static unsigned integer transaction count, right? You see that? And this actually has a three part. The first part I declare is a class variable, so it's a static. The second part is unsigned integer, which is the data type for the variable. And then I have a variable name, right? Okay, so are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's see how the object is created. So as a C or C++ programmer, to aware about how memory is laid out in your system is very important. So when I have this class, assuming this class is called transaction, let's just pretend this is transaction, okay? And this is a transaction, and then when I create an object from this class, then I have a lots of transaction object, right? So it's important to also know, especially for C++ programmer, that each of the objects is actually need to be using some amount of memory, right? When I create an object, just like a malloc of struct in the C language, that it means it means memory allocation for you to host this object, right? But remember I said this static variable is not being duplicated everywhere because all the objects are sharing this one. So when I say that, means the memory allocation for this blue circle, which is the static variable, is also very tricky. That it has to be somewhere that you will be putting there. It's not going to be with the object because the object are already hosting those variable that's actually per object, per copy. Okay, every object will have the copy, but this one is a unique memory location. You can think about as a reference somewhere in the memory stack that's actually going to use that variable that every object, everybody increment by one, you're actually going to increment by this blue. You're not going to increment yourself. Okay, so there must be a place which you're going to allocate that memory. It's not in the class itself like this, and therefore this line is actually help you to just create that line, to create the variable. So essentially, you can view this as, let me actually just write it differently. You will see that. I mean, if I write a variable, say, let me just say unsigned integer transaction count is equal to 0. Assuming I actually write the line like this in this .c file, means that I'm actually create a variable called transaction count, right? And then I initialize that to be 0. And that variable, the data type is unsigned int. So that's just a declare variable. So it's in this case, it's a global variable, and other people can actually access to here, okay? But for static variable, the class is a class static variable that you have to, in this case, you have to add transaction colon to specify this is the place where to implement the memory usage of that variable we just declared in transaction.h. Okay, so that's why this line has to be there. And by the way, this part, the textbook didn't talk about it, but I feel is advantage for C++ programmer to know that why you need to add this line in the transaction.cpp is because you have to access that variable for one, and you have to some place to host that particular variable. That's why this line cannot be in transaction.h. If it's in transaction.h, means that whenever anything is in the .h file, it could be included more than one time. And therefore, if you put it in that transaction.h, you will have a multiple different location being declared and all share the same name. Therefore, the linker is going to detect that, hey, how can you have multiple of the same thing? And therefore, it will give you an error message when you link together. It will say duplicate declaration. Okay, is that okay? Do you understand what I'm saying, Lucia?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anybody else have any question? I mean, this part seems very simple, just one line, and but it has a lot of issue that you can learn from that instance. This is about language design, and also talk about memory. In fact, I emphasize this again and again. The difference between C and Java and the Python programmer is that C++ programmer, you need to be more sensitive to the memory usage and where the memory is. So when you go through lecture number 7 or 8, I forgot, when I talk about multiple inheritance, I mean, my content I deliver there is nothing Java programmer or Python programmer need to worry about. But C++ programmer, I'm sorry, you have to learn those things. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Any question? Yes. Okay. That's great. I'm going to. Can you give me 1 second?
That's fine.
Okay? Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I got the success message, but I didn't implement one of the functions because I didn't understand how it worked. It's the get IP address string function, and whenever I try to implement it, I get a runtime error, not a runtime error, but a compile error.
Mm-hmm.
That says that something about it not being a constant since it's returning a reference to the string.
What did you do? I forgot. Is it in the constructor or in the?
It's in one of the getter functions. It's called get IP address string in person.cpp.
Right. So I was let's actually go back to my. I have to share my screen. This must be in person.cpp, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you can just return. Okay, I think I will do this. Try to see if this will work. I forgot exactly what I did, but I could have just returned 0.0.0.0.0. Would that work? Have you tried something like this?
I've tried returning any string, but it says that it still gives me an error. Let me pull up the error message. It says, so 0.0.0.0.
Okay, then try this one. Try this std string, say s is equal to s. I think I can just say this 0.0. Just do things like this, okay? And then return s.
Yeah, that works. But what's the purpose of that function? Because I didn't notice it being called anywhere else in the program.
Yeah, this at this moment is not being used as an IP address, because later when we want to identify a person's current IP address, for example, you're moving from one network location to another network location, and this person will help. So this is a placeholder for us to try to understand which network that the person is connecting to. That's why we put it here. But right now for 234 homework, at least 234, you don't need to worry about that.
Okay. And one final question. There are a few empty constructors that says to be implemented, but they're empty constructors. So do we need to actually input code for them?
Which example?
Like GPSDD in person.cpp? It's the top function. The empty one, the empty constructor for it.
Yeah, I guess you don't need to do anything here. I would say, if I were you, I would just probably put, I can just put some default value. By the way, we won't check this, but if I were you, I would just put 0.0 and also put this to be 0.0. By the way, I'm sorry, I should have fixed this before I sent it to you. There's a typo. I actually have this typo everywhere for the longitude, okay? So just make sure you remove that extra T. Okay, yeah.
And the same would hold for the IP address empty constructor then?
Yeah, the same thing for IP address, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Professor, I had a question. So I don't quite remember, but for homework 2, part 2, what are the main functions that we need to implement? Because you said there are some that we don't need to. Okay,
so you look for everything that I said to be implemented by student. Look for those places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
so
all the places that says to be implemented by students. Like some of the place, in fact, the GPS, the newer constructor, that one, if you don't do anything there, like what I show you, I want to set the variable to be 0, but if you don't do anything there, but I think for the purpose of part 2, it will still be okay. It will still run, it will still deliver the right result.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, sorry, where do you get the files for person.cpp and transaction.cpp again?
It's included in the tar file.
Okay, but like how exactly do we like get it out of the tar file?
Okay, so the command, you will use the tar command, and then the flag is a zxvf, and then whatever that tar file name file, I'm assuming is a tar file.gz. This is the command to do that.
Oh.
This will untar the file and get the directory ecs36b homework 2 part 2 unfinished.
Okay, so it's like the same one as part 1. I mean homework 1.
Yes,
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let me unshare.
Actually, Professor, I have some questions regarding homework 1, but I wonder if I can, ask it because it's kind of like last week stuff.
No problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cool. So homework one, like for part one, we do not need to submit anything, right? We just run it, or
Right.
just,
That's correct.
okay. So it's just basically like dealing with myheal.cpp, which is like putting files back into one big
Right.
file and compare. Is that?
Right, that's right. But by the way, I just want to clarify, UE, is that for homework one, part one, even though you don't need to submit anything, but we actually check from the server, because every time you actually send a HW1 client program, that the server actually log that this student ID has submit a correct entry. So we actually log, just let you know that, but you still have to do it, even though you don't need to hand in anything.
Yeah. I run some command and says like view success. I don't know, like if that helps. And I think, I don't know. I just gonna double check. So my problem is basically with my heal.cpp. Like when I try to put back my my prefix, like a huge like
The
10,
chunks. Right.
yeah, like 10 chunks of small files into one big file. I have some problem with that. And so the basic problem is how can I like read multiple files with same prefix? Like I'll name them my prefix .000 with a bunch of 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just like
Right,
the way
right.
you arrange it.
Right. So let me share my screen. I just give you some. Hopefully, this will help you. Let me actually go to my screen. You can see my screen, right? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. What's happening? Okay, so let's actually see how we break it. I mean, I will encourage you to think about this way from my break. So let me show you this piece of code here. I'm actually going to show you this piece of code from here all the way over here. Okay, so this piece of code, you can see that I'm actually trying to break the file. And over there, I'm actually producing this file name using this formula. First, I actually reset the memory fname. I reset the memory using B0. And this is an important line that I actually produce the name. So I produce the name using this format string, using the prefix. So argv2 is prefix. And I put in a lot of 0, but at the end, I'm actually have an index I, which this line is helping me to produce the name for each of the chunk that my break produce, right? Are you with me, UE, right
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yes.
so this name is exactly the same name that you were using myheal to create the name that you're going to read into. If you think about that, it's the reverse, right? This piece of code helped me to produce the name, and then I produce a chunk. But when I heal is basically I use the same logic to produce that name and use the name to open the file for the chunks that I'm going to read it in one by one. So essentially in the myheal, I imagine you will have a piece of code looks like this. The only difference is that here the loop is I'm doing I is equal to 0, and then there is no stopper, and then I plus plus. That is my break because I don't know how many chunks I'm going to break. But in the myheal, the last argument of the program is actually to say how many chunks you have. So you're going to put something, looks like, assuming that variable is called chunks, then you're going to do I is equal to smaller than chunks, or whatever. You probably, if
Yeah, I got a fifth argument, which is like
right, fifth
11,
argument.
which is like, yeah, it's like the number of chunks. I
Right.
get it. I give it a like.
Right. So you need to have something like this, right? I is smaller than a to I, argument 4, because argument 4 is the fifth argument,
Yes.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's a string, so you use ASCII to integer to convert that to an integer, and then you can use this loop control. And so you are having a loop that's this loop exactly, but this time you're actually doing similar thing. You still create an F name, and you still doing this name printing to generate the name, and then this part will be exactly the same. Also, you actually open the name, and then the result is TF. Over here, you can actually change it. This is no longer a TF. This is really a chunk F. You can actually change the name to be. I would change it. By the way, this is actually the heal. I put a comment here the other day for the other office hours. So I would call it chunk F. This chunk F. You see that? I'm actually, instead of writing it, I'm actually changing to reading it. So now you see that I'm actually open the file, this chunks F. So this chunks F, if you have 11 chunks, it will be, this line should be executed 11 times, because this loop will go 11. And this I will be 0 to 10. And it will produce 11 different names. You open 11 different files. Is that helping you to understand this a little bit better? Yui?
Yes, yes. But actually, I got this like sorted out, but I failed to like open any piece because I run the program. It says like, oh, fail to open the source file. So it's really embarrassing.
The source file or the chunk file? I mean, which file you open have
Oh,
error?
chunk file. Sorry. So there's like 10 pieces of chunk. I try to open them, but they keeps popping up say fail to open these chunks.
Okay. So I will, there are two things you need to check because I didn't see your window. Number one, you want to make sure when you run the program is running at the same directory of those chunks that you have. Okay, it's the same directory. So when you open fail, that means two things. Number one, the file was not there. Somehow the file is gone to a different directory. Number two, it happens also very often, the file name is not being reproduced correctly. It means that when you do this, that somehow there's a typo or something, so the file name doesn't match, or if you give a different prefix. So I would suggest you to do this. Every time you print this out here, right? Okay, look at my screen here. Every time you done it here, you will say, I will do this. fprintf, stder. I said this f name is %s \n, and then f name. Okay, I will add a line looks like this to just let me know what it is. What is the f name is actually trying to open, and if the f name if it's failed, then I will be able to see why it failed, and then I will then look at this line to see whether the file is gone or the f name has not been generated correctly. Okay, there must be one of the two cases. Okay.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
And
Good luck.
do you provide like a big file for us to like try, or do we like produce our
You
own?
can try. You can use any of your own file to
Okay.
do that. I didn't particularly, because I mean it's probably you can look for your hard disk. Just search for something big. Okay. But
Alright.
don't search for something which is important to you, because if your
yeah.
program might corrupt it. Okay, make a copy and then try it. Okay,
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, any other question?
Can I just ask like a simple question?
Of
Like
course.
in your code, mybrick.c, what does that CCC mean? It's like in your code, and I don't know.
I know what you. So this is a typical example that sometimes as a programmer, and don't use too much abbreviation such that other people are very frustrated to understand your code. Okay. All right. So I don't know why I call it CCC. It's just a buffer. I probably should just call it a buffer. I don't know why I call it CCC. Okay, and it's just you think about that. It's just a buffer of a character. To when you call fread, you have to provide some memory space. And I know I'm going to read 8 byte. That's why I want to create an 8 byte variable. 8 byte memory. That's why I call it CCC. But I probably should just call it. If I'm going to write the code again, I'm actually going to change this to read fread buffer. fread. Sorry, I'm going to call fread buffer 8 byte. I mean, if I really want to be clear about what I'm doing. Okay, if I declare like this, then that's probably much better, right, for people to understand what I'm doing. But there is no semantic meaning about CCC. I don't remember why I'm calling CCC. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you for the clarification.
sure.
Okay, so
Okay.
hi, Professor.
Yes.
So the make file you prove to us is using GCC, not G++.
Right. That's correct.
So if we just use GCC, is it okay?
Yeah, you use GCC for this one is okay.
Okay.
Let me actually say that G++ is typically more strict than GCC. So my experience, which maybe I could be wrong, if you have a code that can compile, is a C program that can compile by G++, it will always be compiled by GCC, but not the other way around. So it means that if you have a code which is written in C and the GCC compiler is okay, but not necessarily G++ will be happy with it. So the thing is that it's okay for you to use GCC for this homework assignment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, who's next? Okay, I think what I will do is that my office hour is almost over, and I think I'm going to end the recording, and so I can start upload. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
also a very short question. Like,
sure, go ahead.
After I first make file and then I run like my break source file and split the files.
Mm-hmm.
And then I use my heal to heal the chunks.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I use this to see like what left in my folder. It have like something like my break.o and my break. So it creates like 4 files. Like
Yeah,
my
create the
break.o, my heal.o, my break, my heal.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
That's
I thought
correct.
it
That's correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
have problem. So
No,
we
it's
should
good.
have
It's good.
this
You
file
should
like,
have those. If you don't have those, that means you have some problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I will, if I don't talk to you earlier, then I will see you tomorrow in class. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Thank
Good
you,
afternoon.
Professor.
Bye. You're welcome. Yeah, Lucia, you want to ask something?
Oh yeah. So like just like a general run through of this problem. So like after I broke the file into like little chunks, then and how do I So I have to program myheal, and then, but how do I put the chunks into myheal to heal them together?
So in general, the way I described to you, the way you have this myheal follow the program instruction is that if you provide the prefix of the chunk, and also you provide the information about how many chunks that you totally has, those information are there, the program of myheal will automatically figure out the name, and then they use the F name to read each of the chunk in. So think about that. If you that's why I showed earlier in the go through the code is essentially is just regenerate the name of the chunk, exactly the same name, and just open the file using fopen, fclose, and using fread and fwrite to actually read each chunk. The only thing that I require you to do extra than what you need to do in what we already have in my break is check whether the chunk size is actually in fact looks okay, and also check whether this chunk exists. That's the 2 arrow checking condition, which I have a one YouTube video you should check. The title I set for 2 arrow condition check or something like that, or error detection. Okay.
Do we need to check the memory leak for homework 1 part 2?
No, you don't need to check. You don't need to handle memory leak. But that's a very, very difficult problem, by the way. Memory leak. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, like when I read your code, because myheal, like the myheal I wrote is just based on, so I just modified my break.
Yes, that's fine.
So like when I see you, like you have free, for example, free TF, free F, and at first I'm just confused about the place, but then I figure out like what you mean.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
You're very welcome. Bye.